Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns.
Unicorns.
Unicorns. And and today is our last episode of Season 4. Episode number 10, Season 4.
40 episodes. We're talking about this little beautiful thing called the year 2021. I tell you what, Phil, not gonna lie. Actually, why does somebody ever start out that way?
It's always like, well, yeah, why do you have to say that?
Like, am I lying to you all the other times? I'm like,
unless I clarify, you never know. You never know.
You know.
But if I clarify, then you're also wondering.
Well, in my own perceived reality, I'm probably trying to tell the truth all the time, but then probably I'm lying either to other people or myself. So maybe there's the...
That's deep and profound.
Conundrum. Right. There's a conundrum of this day. So I'm still not going to lie. I shall state the truth.
Right.
In the yearning of my heart for a statesman to rise up out of the ashes. All right? That's also profound, longingly, and telling, and we won't go down that rabbit trail. But you know, there's a lot that in a cynic's mind that I could just tell you, you know what, 2021, I'm really okay with it, like passing, being gone.
Mm-hmm.
And at first blush, it would give me pause to say, you know, it wasn't a great year. Like, I'm glad to be over it, done with it. And yet, what I know I'm doing is I'm really dispelling a lot of great things that happened.
Mm.
You know, like I'm just giving over to negativity.
It's true.
You know, and so like then it gives me, like, in my head, whatever synaptic connections are actually taking place. I wonder, are we being so influenced by pandemic and like media and other people struggling that where we head down, the rabbit hole we head down is a rabbit hole of negativity instead of focusing on, man, there's a lot of good things.
Yeah, I would say that we're definitely influenced by that. You know, and I don't know. I think we're the same on, like, we don't necessarily watch a lot of, like, network news.
I haven't seen network news in multiple years.
But I think, you know, but to be able to say we're not affected by media would also be, you know, incorrect.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
we all consume some kind of media in a sense, whether it's, I mean, I have media that comes across my phone,
right?
You know, from the stupid and absurd things like whoever was charged with sexual assault last, and to like, hey, award show season, like, you know, dumb stuff, and then, you know, you get to you know, the other side of it, and you have, like, news stories, political thing. I mean, they all come across.
Yeah.
And so it all is being consumed, whether or not I'm paying attention to it very closely. But it's going to play a lot on how we're going to view what's happening. So I would say, yes, the pandemic still, whether some people in our
I'm so over it.
Right. I mean, I would love to just move past it and go beyond it.
But we're in the middle of it.
Right, but we're still there.
Yeah.
I mean, and so
it's a current experience.
Right. I mean, and like the only place that I'm ever going to, like, know that we're beyond it is, like, hey, I don't have to wear a mask anymore, you know, and yes, we live in the city of Chicago, which has a higher demand for,
Yeah.
for that to happen. I mean, when you go different places, like there's less of a demand or less of a push. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a reprieve, but it doesn't mean the pandemic is reprieved in those places either. And that's kind of the balance of it, is like, oh, like it's still around and it's still here, and there's people are still being affected by it.
Yeah.
I mean, and they talk about new variants, and the Omicron is the one that's out there now, and like, all right. And we can't, look at 2021 without saying that the pandemic has played some way into this season, as well as 2020 obviously is when it started.
Yeah.
And so obviously it does play, and I think it still plays on people's psyche, mental things as well. So I mean, there's more Zoom meetings, and that has an effect on you. There's more like less human interaction and more, technological, and like that plays on you. Like, I mean, it's for sure, something that I think that people are feeling a sense of loneliness still, because they are spending more time isolating than they are in groups. And some people are like, oh, I love isolation. Well, yeah, like it doesn't matter what kind of personality type you are, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, like loneliness and isolation can still have mental effects on you.
Yeah.
That can be negative.
Well, yeah, I mean, so much, and that's why, like, when I roll out with, hey, I'm not gonna lie, I'm ready for 2021 to be over, but really, when I go back and think about it, man, there's a lot of good things. And the other day, because really, when we come back for season 2. Well, we should call it year 2, because we already have 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So when we come back for year 2 of the podcast, man, by that time in January, like all the work that I need to have done on the house being sold in Des Moines will be done. Anticipating the next year to come. I'm getting right ready in the middle of, researching for phase 2 on the studio, which is me going to art shows and submitting my stuff. So I think I don't know that it's so much about being done with what has happened as much as the anticipation of what hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
But that is becoming a barometer, like in my mind, is I have a yellow flag in my life,
mm-hmm.
and I'm asking myself, is this a negative or is this a positive?
Mm-hmm.
How are you really viewing this, Steve? Because when I was back working on the house, when I got home, I told Amy, I'm like, gosh, I just, for the record, want to say how grateful I am that I have the health, the strength, and the abilities to do what I'm doing at the house. I mean, some people, they don't have the ability. Mm-hmm. So they got to pay for having other people come in and, fix and paint and clean and do whatever. Okay, cool. So I got ability. There's some people my age who aren't as youthful as I am at my age.
Mm-hmm. Very youthful.
Well, hey, if I could dial it back to 19, I'd find the more stupid self of me. And I mean, like, there's a lot that, again, even at this age, I can be grateful for. Time and experience gathered in observation equals wisdom.
Right.
Versus the sacred text saying it's the fear of God that is wisdom. But, I come back to it in that, I mean, like, I've had classmates who've died of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I think of people in my age bracket, and There's nothing to be taken granted for about your current day.
Right.
You know, all of a sudden we're like, yeah, we don't know what happened to Dad. He keeled over, you know. And I'm still mindful of that because I'm living out the year that of age that my father died.
Right.
And so, like, there's some part of that. And I'm like, I'm getting ready for bonus year, you know.
Everything's bonus after this.
You know. And yet my grandpa lived till he was older, but my grandma lived another 20 years after, you know. I mean, technically, I mean, there's people that I know who are close to me, i.e., hey, Marilyn, Mom Coble. You know, I mean, she's, you know, 74, and, you know, my grandma lived till she was like 93 or something like that. I mean, so, you know, I mean, like, gosh, 20 years from now, if I get 20 more years right now, I mean, it's like when people are like, oh, my dad died, and I'm like, how old was your dad? Well, he was 80. I'm like, you know, that's a good run. You know, it's like 26 years longer than my dad had.
Right.
So that's a quarter of a century.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now, as far as, I'm going to irritate people. Based on the million years that this world's been floating around you know, the sun, you know, I mean, like, it's a speck. But so anyway, that's where, instead of me focusing on, oh shit, you know, I gotta go do this work on this house, and it's gonna be a pain in the butt, and it's like, I'd rather be doing other things, you know, and the other things that I do are a lot more fun, in context, to our pre-recording conversation, unless you have to do them multiple times over again.
Well, I think sometimes we discount, I mean, because and if you'll allow me a moment to reflect on, like, you had lots of preparation.
I'm putting you on the big screen so you can talk directly to the audience. Yeah.
So, like, what I noted, like, with you had lots of preparation this season. Like, 2021 was a big time of preparation, both with your studio and getting settled in still. I mean, this is your first full year in the city of Chicago. And so when you're looking at it, sometimes I think we discount preparation as like, yeah, it's not, you know, but when you're actually reflecting on it and saying, no, there was a lot that, you know, just getting acclimated and just getting settled in. I mean, and that takes a little while. Like, it's not an easy process to be like, oh, new place, new, you know, like, and there's a lot of groundwork that takes for you to be able to say, hey, I can, you know, I'm like, this prep work, it's not sexy, it's not
it's so
not, you know,
not
like
sexy.
Right.
I know both of us enjoy being eye candy.
Right. We'd like to be sexy. No, but I think but that's a big part of it, is like, you're like, wait a second, like, this isn't anybody, like, you know, like your Christmas card or whatever, your year-end card. Like, hey, everybody, I spent a lot of time prepping this year. Like, people are like,
oh, so you're a prepper now?
Who cares?
Hey, don't throw me in that bucket. I am not for white nationalism. But I remember my, you know, Aunt Linda, when we were talking about being sexy. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's pause there.
Yeah, we'll stick. We'll float around the sexiness.
Yeah. So I remember our first live show. My Aunt Linda was like, "Hey, Steve, can you like do something in your sexy Barry White voice?" Aunt Linda, shout out to you. We so appreciate your faithfulness.
I know. She listens all the time.
Well, and when I got to see her, she came out with my other aunts and family for Michaela's reception. Mm-hmm. She's like, "Oh, I see you every Sunday night," and I was so used to being seen on video at Gloria Day on the weekend, you know, for worship and stuff like that. I was like the first place my head went was like, well, I'm not leading worship every weekend. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, cut daisies and unicorns, and yes. And if you wonder, Aunt Linda, we are taking a cue from your comments in regards to video length. She just told me, she goes, "Hey, can I give you a couple pointers?" And I'm like,
right.
"Absolutely. This is what we're asking for.
Mhm.
You know, you can email us pointers
Mm-hmm.
at cutdaisiesandunicorns@gmail.com."
Right.
And you know, and she's like, "Yeah, I can make it about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half, but you know, then it's getting late and I'm ready to go to bed." And but then again,
Mm-hmm.
there are people in our lives, our viewers,
Right.
that use us as a sleep aid.
Exactly.
Shout out to Matt Handley.
Right. We've mentioned Matt.
I know. And so like you know, in that to your point as well, I believe we could also mention someone who's probably never heard us at all. But I think we would consider him a mentor at one level, is Ron Burcham. Ron Burcham told me in my first year and a half, second year, because you were there 6 months before me, he's like, I remember us standing outside. I had just led worship. You were preaching. And he's like, "Phil's getting there." He goes, "This is exactly what I anticipated. It was about year 2.5 for you." And he's like, "With new hires, always consider 3 years is what it takes for them to reach potentially what they could become." That first year, to your point, I mean, the first year is a whirlwind.
Right.
You know, the first year you're acclimating to culture. The first year you're getting a sense of what the tide is with the ebb and the flow and things like that.
Yeah.
The second year, you don't have to navigate what's coming into you because you've already lived through that cycle once.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're able to have acclimated and move into, and then by the third year, then you're in stride, and then you can pick up your own personality in what's going on and be able to do that. And so, but it was early in life when I got to 6th grade, and we had a junior high was separate, was 7th and 8th grade, and then it was high school, freshman through senior.
Mm-hmm.
Man, when you're in 6th grade in elementary school, you're at the top of your game. Until you're a 7th grader. And then you're the 8th grader, and you're at the top of your game, and then you become a freshman. And so...
or you get knocked down again.
You do. And then you're a senior in high school with all these punks that are below you, and then you become a freshman in college. Some people do. Not everybody goes to college.
Right.
And I think some of our favorite millennials would argue whether college is necessary or not necessary. And you know what? It's a perspective. In the era that we grew up in, the next logical step
was college.
It
was a built-in expectation.
Well, and I think that our educational systems had failed us enough that college became what high school used to be. And so, you know, and it's a series of that through life, you know, and I wonder, because I haven't really reached that yet in regards to as people grow older and they enter into retirement, I wonder how you get to be a freshman in retirement, but then you become a senior in retirement. I wonder how you frame your mindset that the first year of retirement, you're just getting your footing set.
Yeah.
And then your second year, you've seen what it's like for a year. And then your third year, are you rising into what you could become through that retirement?
Yeah, it's interesting to point out from that perspective, because it's almost like you're like, I'm retiring. I mean, like I've already lived. I mean, I have experience, but you're right. Like retirement can be seen in the same way. Like you're moving into something new. Like
Yeah.
You've never experienced that before, so why would we not look at it in the same way?
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, like there could be an argument that in this stage, like I think we're in two different stages of life. You're in your middle section, which might be considered summer or fall. I really see like the stage of life that I'm in is heading into my winter, like my last third of life. You know, and gosh, I mean, if I could make it till I'm 90, cool. I mean, like bonus years. I start bonus year number 1 next, in January.
That's right.
And so people think, well, that's horrible, Steve. You're a young man at 54. I'm like, well, yeah. I looked at my dad in the face at the age of 54. Didn't think he was old, but he died. Mm-hmm. And so like there's a frailty of life that I hold closely. Right. It's an open hand, but I hold it closely. That I'm just not. I'm not taking any day for granted in regards to that, because I don't know how many.
But then it was taught to you at that. I mean, at that part, like when your dad died, like, and he was young.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say young is still that.
Yeah. I
mean, like you're taught that, so then you're saying like that's always working on you.
Oh.
No matter how long it's been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's always behind it, and it's always working in that system, in your mentality and your thinking, and that's the reason why when you're saying this is now bonus time.
Yeah.
And people are like, no, like that's not, you're still young. No, it's still bonus time. Like, this is what's been taught to me in life, from life.
Well, and that was 26 years ago.
Yeah.
My dad died on the same day, March 8th, that his dad died 30 years earlier.
Wow.
Of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that?
That is crazy.
I mean,
so that definitely plays on you.
so do I only have? So it's been 26 years. I know that because of Micah and his age. Mm-hmm. So does that mean I have 4 more years?
Let's hope not.
If the lottery of life,
right.
Which hey everybody, by the way, I don't really consider life a lottery. But if the lottery of life says that in the Cobble genes, we got 30 years past when our fathers lived. Whoa.
Yeah.
What do you So that frames me. What am I gonna do? Like, what am I choosing every day? Moving into my mentality of negativity or positivity. Mm-hmm. Because the media that influences me primarily is NPR, because I'm listening to that, and I bounce. I got 3 channels, and I'm like, oh, Mary Louise Kelly, I do not need to hear your voice right now. And she's lovely. Right, she's lovely. And Kai, I love the business thing that you do. And if you guys ever want to be like a guest on our show, we would love to have you, just to come in and share with us the NPR goodness of everything going on. But I ask myself, when I feel weighted down, and by the way, I started my vitamin regimen.
How long?
I've got about a week in.
Okay.
Yep. But
so what is it? What's in the vitamin?
So
regimen?
I'm doubling down on vitamin D, and then I have, since I've overcome the symptomology of my sinus infection and things like that, I'm only taking an additional 500 milligrams of vitamin C, and then I have a men's daily vitamin that I'm taking one. I haven't added the other things per Micah. I
still haven't added magnesium either. So.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we're on the same. I mean, I do a men's daily, and then I do C, and I do D.
Yeah.
And then I take an allergy pill, but
yeah.
That's just
and if I took an allergy pill, it'd probably dry up my sinuses, and I'd like have less symptoms of the other stuff going on. But I mean, but when it comes to positivity and negativity, if I feel weighted down, I have to ask myself, what's going on, And so with that, I've just started now. I have included another thing in my schedule in the last week that just consistently that I'm working toward. and that is I'm picking up the sacred texts, and I'm reading a psalm a day. Now, I'm doing it selfishly. Some people will be like, oh, thank God, Steve's back in the Word again.
Because there were some people that were concerned.
And just people who have that on their checklist, and whether you're a good person of God or a bad person of God depends on whether you pray or you were just preaching on this Sunday, and stuff, and so I just kind of poked the bear. But actually, I mean, it wasn't based on. I'm doing it selfishly because I am storing up for songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And so what better place to be able to gather for content than other songwriters?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's poetry.
It is.
And it's feelings.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a direct thought process of a person
Mm-hmm.
in commentary to themselves or their self and to this unknown deity.
Mm-hmm.
And a declaration to anyone who's willing to hear and listen, which, I mean, how is that any different than songwriting today?
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, yeah. So, just doing that, and seeing the world. Now, I grabbed 5 albums off of my vinyl shelf,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also listening to that stuff too. Again, as an influence for songwriting, because 2022, I'm committing 1 hour a week to songwriting. And so by the end of 2022, maybe we'll have some original songs that YouTube can't put a copyright claim to.
Right.
With original content.
Yeah. Screw you, YouTube.
YouTube.
Flagging our material.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think every situation, you hear there's 2 sides to every story, and I had some mean old guy tell me, well, there's really 3 sides. It's what you think happened, what they think happened, and what really happened, which perceived reality is what they're speaking into. But yeah, I mean, I'm just where can I find the good in what's occurring, and that plays into how do you understand other people. I seek to understand before being understood. It's out of a sales book that I read when I was in mortgages, when
Stephen Covey.
Yes.
Covey.
Yeah. And I've read that whole book. I only took away one thing, but that one thing has shaped my whole life from that point on. And I do. I want, and admittedly, my forehead may become bruised from beating my head into the wall, that there's some people that I just don't understand. But it doesn't mean that I've run out of the energy or the capacity to take time to be willing to try.
So it's an interesting, as you're talking about this, what's going through my head is some people look at the end of a year as all right, this is the time now I'm going to start a new year with new practices. I'm going to start the new year with something new. And I always question, why are we waiting on something to start because we have a start of a new year, instead of being able to say, hey, this is an opportunity. As you said, you're already doing it now. You've already started to practice it, whether it was hey, it's coming to the end of the year, or you were just saying, you know what, this needs to happen. This is the season for it. And that's why I wonder with you people, everyone who listens and watches, is that why are we waiting to be able to put into practice things that we want to do? Because we're, we have this idea of the New Year's resolution or whatever it is that we're trying to focus on. I mean, and we've talked about new starts, and new starts don't have to start just because it's hey, new year, new start. Right. We're saying, no, a new start can happen hey, you know what, to tomorrow's the day or today's the day. Like, I'm going to start that right now instead of waiting. And I think it then gives you a little bit more of a sense of, like, why, like, I don't have to then look at this imaginary timeline of, like, oh, here's the start January 1, January 2, whatever it might be, that you're saying, hey, like, I'm going to start this because I know it's going to be good for me.
Right.
Whether it's a health practice, whether it's a mental practice, whether, like, if these things are good, why are we waiting?
Well, I think the question you're asking, and listeners, again, we would love to hear your feedback if you want to send us an email or in the comments. But I think the question that you're asking is speaking into humanity. And historically, humanity practices what it's familiar with. Mm-hmm. And one of our episodes that we have is, what does it mean to be a learner, or what does it mean to be teachable? And we go in, and people can check that out on, if they go to YouTube, we have different categories for, like, the videos. So you can pick on life lessons, and it'll bring up all the videos for life lessons. And these are things that we've addressed. The thing that we also do is we're so committed to, and again, if this is an offensive word, I'm sorry, but I shall offend, the evolution of ourselves. Mm-hmm. The Christianese word is transformation. We're committed to the transformation. We understand that we currently are, and this goes actually into sacred text, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. At the end of the chapter, it says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. And there will come a day when I look through the glass dimly, but there will come a day where I will see as I have been seen. And so we operate from a place of that we're working through the weightedness of our humanity, right, to become what we're already seen to be. And so we talk about adventure. We talk about life as an adventure. We talk about discovery, being able to pick underneath the stones and find things that we haven't seen before. Mm-hmm. Our worldview is looking at life into what we are becoming. And so, why people, I think what we also do is we give a tool in that, since we have 4 seasons in every year, which, oddly enough, seems to be like season changes, mm-hmm, seems to be like life changes. Right. There's 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. There's the spring season, the summer season, the fall season, the winter season. Winter sets us all up for spring is sprung, the grass is green, where have all the flowers been? And with our seasons, we're giving people the opportunity. That's when we talked about, hey, let's change, mm-hmm, start something new. What are you stuck in? Right. Now, and we've been navigating that through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Which is a point of isolation, a point of loneliness, and a point, really a point. But, man, dude, I'm telling you, I think when you come back to say, man, you've had a year of preparation, why, like, I wasn't even thinking about, the new year's coming, I need to, make these changes or whatever. I mean, one was I got sick. That's why I'm starting to take my vitamins. I'm like, it's time to be proactive about, like, health right now, and so there's that. But another thing is that in my capacity, because of the preparatory work and all the time that it took, I didn't have room for the other. Mm-hmm. Now moving into the season of creativity on multiple levels. But I also had, again, someone else spoke into my life. Someone else moved into my life, and I was paying attention. And when I went to Davenport for that Oktoberfest, block party, I just realized, I'm like, dude, I miss performing, like, in that level. And so, yeah, I think a couple episodes I talked about, like, replacing a bunch of covers with new covers. Like right now I've got 13 covers on my computer saved that I'm getting ready to print out or, be able to do charts with and stuff. And I'm actually working on balancing, because what I found myself doing is like, oh, I know that song. I could sing that, It doesn't necessarily, I want to balance it with some new release stuff and kind of messing around. But
Sure.
I'm going to learn a Beatles tune. Come together. I'm stopping so we don't get copyright infringement.
Yeah. By the way, Beetle, did you watch the 3-part epic series or whatever?
That's on, isn't that on Apple TV or Disney
So
Plus?
There's one that's on Apple.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
And then there's one that's on Disney's, like the longer Disney Plus is. It's like the longer 3-part, 6-hour thing. I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
Because I'm also not a big Beatles fan. So.
Right, but shout out to Jeff Mackey, who may be the greatest Beatles fan I've ever met in my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, but man, what a great guy. And actually, the last time he and I talked or exchanged a text, I was asking him, like, dude, if I wanted to really catch the magic of the Beatles, and so he sent me some songs to listen to and stuff like that. But yeah. So anyway, we digress.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got some things you're gonna, begin. I always, like you were talking about, the New Year. It always reminds me, with the vitamins, when the New Year's usually it's right at the end or at the beginning. Costco will remind you, because they'll move all of their vitamins to the very part of the entry.
Yeah, I know.
So they're like, hey, if you want to get on a good vitamin regimen, it's right here, right?
Yeah.
And they put it on discount, and so it's save up. If you're gonna find your discount on your vitamins, it's gonna be the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's here's a reminder. It's a new year. Start on a good vitamin regimen.
It's so funny that your awareness of that, because you preached on it last year at the beginning of the year, and I was in Costco on Tuesday, domestic Tuesday. Yeah, actually worked out this week, and as I walked in, I'm like, oh, Pastor Phil told me that if I want to watch what Costco's marketing, look what they've moved to the front of the store. And so anyway, yeah, they're trying to sell electric toothbrushes, coffee mugs, and they brought up all the wine for the holiday. And they're like flats of wine, like Chardonnays and Merlots, and I think Josh is in there, Josh Sellers and stuff like that. And I thought,
that makes sense.
Fa la 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 la. Stop, copyright.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is funny. I mean, that they, retailers aren't dumb. They've caught on, hey, what's the season for this? What's the season for this? What can we put out front that people are going to see that we can sell more of at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, because their goal is to separate you from the money that you've earned.
Right. That's the goal.
And you're trading your life for the money that you've earned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting part of new seasons as well, because they always say retailers, especially Targets and they're always trying to be a season ahead.
Oh yeah.
So they're you're preparing for winter in the fall.
Oh
so
yeah.
They're gonna start putting winter gloves, winter hats, winter jackets, sweaters, and you're oh, I don't want to be there yet. But they're nope, you need to think ahead. We're thinking ahead.
I got my Dickies hats replenished, and my Dickies coat that is I'd call it a 3-season coat, in July
Yep.
at Dick's Sporting Goods. sporting goods.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
So they were even further than a season ahead.
oh, I mean, it was like,
I guess it would have been, I mean, some people would use those for hunting, so I guess.
well, and
That
what
would
they
be
were
fall.
really, I think going into school season,
Mm.
you know, and like people are like shopping and doing stuff. Hey, so I've got two things in my head.
Two things.
Yep. One is, what's the deal with camouflage and why do people wear it?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that the idea, right? I mean, and you know the idea, but I mean, I think that's where your question, but like people are trying to hide.
Are they?
Well, I mean, like that's always the funny thing, like especially the.
I mean, this is urban Chicago.
right, the brightly colored camouflage, or like.
Well, technically, that's a safety thing,
so
you know.
guys-
So like,
I don't
and
hunt, so I've never hunted.
and this is totally folklore. All right, everybody, if you want to know folklore about camouflage, back in the day when I used to hunt, you had to wear, like they passed a law that you had to wear a bright orange, and that was for your own safety. So
With
that
the other hunters.
Yep. So if hunters were hunting on the similar plot of land, then they would see your orange hat or orange vest or whatever. And there was some science behind that deer don't see. I mean,
Color.
yeah, or like how they see color, that fluorescent orange wasn't, like, you wouldn't be sticking out. But so in the camouflages, and I'm not sure about the science behind it. My question is that, and I know we've talked about sexy already,
Yeah.
but would you like to see me in a pair of bright blue camouflage leggings?
No. That would not be sexy.
Come on, what about bright orange leggings?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense in an urban context.
Now, I saw a gentleman yesterday when I went to the store, and he had on, what are those boots that like are you know, they're fuzzy on the inside.
Uggs?
Yes. So I saw a middle-aged man in leggings
And Uggs?
and Uggs with Christmas socks pulled up. Thankfully, he was wearing some kind of gym short over his leggings.
That's good.
But, like, is there any part? No. So why do people in urban context, why is there this draw? Or why? Here's my question. Stores, why are you even selling that shit? I really don't. I don't understand.
Yeah. I always wondered if the UGG company, if they like made their first prototypes and people are like, that is UGG. You know, what am there
Yeah.
it is. It's
Ding ding ding
UGG.
ding 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 ding.
Ugly.
I don't-
Man,
I
what is
don't-
wrong with that that prototype? It's ugly.
Yeah. Ugly. Yeah. So that was one of my questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been a fan of camouflage, so I haven't worn it.
I get it in the rural context. Like, I get that. I mean, number one, if you're shopping at Fleet and Farm for your wardrobe,
Sure.
nothing. Hey, you know what? If you
You
got a
do
fleet
you. Uh-huh.
or you got a
Got a
farm,
Then it makes sense.
you should shop there.
It makes sense.
Really, it totally okay.
Right.
But I mean, like, there's timber camouflage, you know, and so, dude, if you want to walk out the front door and you want to look like a forest, cool. I mean, and if you live on a farm and forest is around you and you want to blend in, cool. But I don't get why all of a sudden somebody's got a camouflage down vest, and why are they selling it in Northfield at Target?
Yeah, well, who all of a sudden made that a fashion choice? That all of a
That
sudden
is what I'm wondering.
that people are gravitating towards.
Right.
Ooh, I love me some camouflage. Like, why? I don't know. I don't know who thought that up.
I think it's really it's a corporate move to separate people from their money.
Right. And all they had to do was get some trendsetter to wear a camouflage
I don't know. People are drawn
vest
to it.
shirt that they're like, ooh, they're wearing it, so that means it must be good.
But when I go to the store and like 3 different people are wearing camo, I'm like, no, I can't see your legs.
Yeah, to me, like it makes you stand out more than it makes you hidden.
Well, I'm like, is that the uniform of the insurrection?
That brings us to another segment. No,
I'm just like, what in the world? So that's one question. My other question that I have,
number 2.
Question number 2, and this is going to be, you're going to have to dig deep for this one.
All right.
Are you ready? Are you ready for it?
I'm trying. I don't like it. I have to mentally prepare.
Okay, I'm going to put the camera on you so people can see your face when I ask this question. Actually, this is a warm fuzzy. Are there any parts of the holiday season, whether it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, that are nostalgic to you?
It's a good question. Nostalgia is one of those things like, like the things that you remember in a positive fashion that were something that stuck with you that you'd like to revisit. Isn't that kind of a similar fashion of what nostalgia is?
So I want to point out to everyone what you just did.
Yeah.
Because when people are like, how do you do what you do? How do you guys do what you do? Now, what I want everyone to pause, if you need to go back and to where Phil's face was full on camera, what you need to do is he actually gave himself buffer time to think about how to answer the question.
I did.
And what he did was...
That's exactly what happened.
He used, since he was on the spot, he used the question, reframed it, and then went to the definition of it to clarify. To give himself time to think about. Because, and this is why I prefaced this whole thing with, you're going to have to dig deep. Because I know Phil doesn't like the holidays.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, was it last episode or whatever? I
think so.
Yeah, I'm sure it was the last episode. And we talked about this, about woundedness through the holidays and just different things in context of how we see holidays and stuff like that. And so I really wanted to poke this bear.
Right.
Because
sure.
He's like, oh my gosh. And if you notice his definition, he moved into the feeling zone, which if you wonder about how Phil feels or how he enjoys expressing how he feels, you need to go back to season 1 and find out where we talk about, and talk about that. But, oh my gosh, dude.
You see, now you've given me plenty of time to come up with
Well, and that's why I wanted to do it. But I wanted to point it out to people that, I mean, these are soft skills.
Exactly what happened.
These are soft skills that you pick up along the way from being a pastor.
Right.
And, it's just, you do it. It's a buffer zone. It gives you time to think through. One of my favorite things in the world, and actually was just sharing with a friend whose husband just took a new ministry, and I was like, oh, I've got all kinds of like things. You're sitting at the back door and people are shaking your hand and they want to engage with you about what you just preached about, right? And like, hey, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness about the things that were said today. If you'd like, you can send me an email or give me a call during the week and we'll set up a time to sit down and talk about that. Because, I mean, like, your job at that time is to greet everyone, not to go down a 30-minute diatribe about, like, what was just said. Yeah.
Or what you would have done with it. I probably wouldn't have gone that direction, but I would have gone this direction. I would have, like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, right.
cool.
Yeah, in your perceived reality, you're not in my position. So, way to
That's
be
why we're made differently.
made.
You're you, I'm me.
Way to be sensitive and caring, Phil.
Which is where I get to with the nostalgia of the season. I
Yes.
try to, and this is why I try to walk carefully, because I try not to take my, like
Your own personal bias.
sarcasm or bias of the season
Cynicism.
into, like, to be able to taint that everybody else's point of view on the season.
Right.
Like, so I try to walk somewhat carefully, because I know that there's lots of people who carry lots of, like, positive nostalgia of the season into, so, like, that's the ultimate reason why because I have, like, offended my wife before because she's loved the season. She's had, probably lots of good nostalgia about the season, and I'm not saying that I've had, like, zero positive things that have happened through the season. I guess that's where digging deep, I mean, understanding that, yeah, there's been lots of positives, but, there's also, like, on a whole, I don't always see the season in a positive way. So, thinking back to what are the most positive then?
Well, I mean, like you're a foodie. You like food.
I do.
Is there a holiday candy meal? A times you value relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and so, like, is there a time around the table that is a favorite, or do you get caught up in, like, typical caretaker in that, like, it really brings you more pleasure to make the meal than to sit down and enjoy it?
Yeah, to me it's, and this is part of, like, the season stuff, is that usually around holidays, we have family that, and, the family this season, I mean, that's here, that's usually around, I mean, my in-laws.
Sure.
So, and my father-in-law loves to cook.
Oh, cool.
And so it's always, like, so holidays when my father-in-law is around, like, he loves to cook, and I don't mind giving that over.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Like, I'll sit back. I'll even help wherever.
You become the sous chef.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
And it's conversation in the kitchen.
Right.
You're doing
Yeah,
meal
yeah.
prep and,
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
And then, like, for my mother-in-law, she doesn't enjoy cooking, but what she does, like, I mean, where her language, like, she loves to clean up. Like, she loves to make sure that everything, like, gets back to a position of, like, non-chaos
Sure.
at some point in time back in the kitchen, because it can get chaotic there.
Sure. Yeah.
And-
Well, I mean, stuff piles up.
Right.
Yeah.
So she loves to clean, and I'm like, I love that.
Yeah. Right.
Because I usually, when I'm cooking,
Yeah.
I'm usually also the one that's going to clean up
Yeah.
in the kitchen at
Yeah.
least. So
Yeah.
so then there's that kind of balance that's happening that doesn't have to necessarily occur during those seasons. So
Yeah.
I'm like, cool.
Nice.
Like, so I also don't mind, like, there's a little bit less, there's more that's taken off of me then, and I'm like, yeah, so that I love that. So
Yeah.
there's not as much pressure. There's not as much, like, all right, I've got to figure out how to remember, like, everything that I need to, check marks and lists and
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
like, all right.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. You just tell me what you want me to do.
Yep. Yep. So during the time of whether it's food prep
Mm-hmm.
or sitting, what I find when I make food is by the time I get done making it, I'm not really hungry.
Right.
Because of my, and I thought it was like, oh, I'd be snacking along the way. It's not. It's the full sensory part.
Mm-hmm.
You're smelling it, you're around it, and stuff like that. But yeah, so then do you enjoy the relational part during the fix, or do you enjoy, all right, we're all at a table together and now we get to enjoy the meal together?
Yeah, I think that there's an aspect to both that I
Yeah.
enjoy, because it at the dinner table, I think that there's a little, then everyone seems to be like, all right, no one else has to do anything
Yeah.
in order to prepare, in order to get ready. Like, you're just now, hopefully enjoying what it is that's being, served. And then it's, I think we've talked about this before, like at the table, whether it's, before or after or during, like there's, at the table is where there's a lots of conversation that then can occur, where maybe in every other aspect of life that you don't get to.
So do you guys eat with the TV on?
No.
See? And
During those times. I mean, I'm not saying that it's all
right,
the time.
right,
but during
right,
those times,
right.
no.
Yep. But you guys don't have a phone basket.
We don't have a phone bag. I've at least considered, because I know right now it's like, it gets stuck in Heather's head a lot. Like, oh, like I hate that we're doing, like that we're on our phone right now. Like, okay, like, so why don't we consider something different?
Yeah.
Like, it's also not something that's out of bounds, because we're, we don't have younger kids anymore. We're like,
Yeah.
but we can still introduce something new.
Yeah. And I just bring up those two items for people to take a look at, because sometimes when people have their meals, there's a big game on.
Mm-hmm.
And people who like sports enjoy being able to watch the game.
The sports ball.
Yeah. But I moved to nostalgia for enjoying the sacred. How as a family, or how as a community, because maybe you don't have family that's close, and maybe the holiday's going to be a lonely time. But how are you going to do that differently? And so, yeah, I was driving down, and it just, I knew that question was going to be a fun one for you to have to answer. And I'm not sure that we even got, hey folks, have we gotten an answer yet?
No, and I'll get, because to me the things that are, have always then continued to be nostalgic is, yeah, there's like food items, sure, things that I mean, my mom always used to make the this like for Christmas, like these coffee cakes.
Yeah.
And so like that was something that was all, I mean, and Heather's she tried like a couple of times, and she's done okay, and then her mom helped her make one too, or whatever, like last year, the year before. But
Yeah.
it's something that that she's tried to recreate. But I think it's not necessarily that like I have to have the food item. It was more like there was, the moment, like my mom put together these things to make sure that we wouldn't,
Sure.
And she shaped it in the form of a candy cane, like even though it had no peppermint, it was like
Sure.
all like sugar. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a pastry thing.
Yeah.
But, like that's part of like the nostalgia, like some of those things. But really when I get to it is like more of just moments with family now.
Yeah.
Where we're sitting around when we're talking or enjoying. I mean, we have things like, usually we watch, a Christmas movie.
Okay.
So things like, we watch, at least Elf, which we have already watched Elf now this season.
Sure.
We haven't watched Christmas Vacation yet.
Okay.
And then we always watch, because this is my wife's favorite, It's a Wonderful Life.
Nice.
And then I introduced with my son, like probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Die Hard.
Yeah.
So, Die Hard #1, which is a Christmas movie, everybody.
Yeah.
It is a Christmas movie. Ho, ho, ho.
You just called me a hoe?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I mean, but so that was something that but it is those things that um, that I remember more now is more of the conversation, more of the relationship, which is the reason why we go back to what I mentioned. Like, this is the reason why those things are more cherished than do I remember what gift my mom gave me or my dad gave. Like, no, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember getting a bike, but I don't remember which year that was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like there of course things like, but the gifts aren't the part that sticks in my head.
Yeah.
It's not a part of the season. Like, oh, I mean, I did get like 2 bottles of whiskey for like like I mean, so like those things can be a part, but it's always like like for me, if I'm getting a bottle of whiskey, then I'm always thinking, who can I enjoy this with? Because I
Right.
don't want to drink it alone.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's always the part for me is like even in those, pieces is like it still goes back to relational things.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the nostalgia lies for me is still relational.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, good stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about you? What are the nostalgic pieces?
Yeah. See here, we've had all this time, and I'm like,
Right.
Phil's already defined the word nostalgia.
We already know what it is.
We talked about the hole that he just dug himself out of, or dug himself into.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-recording, you and I were talking about like, I mean, Amy and I have just, my children are older. There's a grandchild on the way, but not here yet. And when it comes to Christmas, we just moved into early in our relationship that we're going to celebrate Christmas all year long. And what that looks like for our family is that we don't go towards the impending doom of the goal of like shopping for everyone in our families for a gift. But we've committed our lives to how can we be generous and be capturing the opportunity to celebrate one another all year long. And that's not just for my children as much as our family as a whole.
Right.
And so, like, man, if we're in Des Moines, I mean, we will treat the kids to a dinner every time. I mean, we'll be like, hey, what's everybody in the mood for? Whether it's Johnny's Steakhouse or Iowa Tap Room, and things like that. And then, I mean, there's just special occasion things where like, oh, we ran across this and we're like, all right, buy 4 of those and send it out, or just whatever and stuff. So it's not about gift giving or gift receiving. And we don't show up anywhere, with the anticipation of that. So I mean, this is where we're knit from a similar cloth in that it's really about being together. One of the things held dear is usually, whether it was Christmas Eve, and I come from a different background where, like, Lutheran faith, Christmas Eve is a service. You go to a service, and Christmas Eve is more important even than Christmas Day service.
Yeah.
It's this finish of the darkness of Advent into the celebration of the birth of Christ at Christmas Eve. And so typically, whenever the family's coming into town, my mom, my grandmother, also have a family Christmas cookie recipe, and when I say a sugar cookie, it's not really what most people think about a sugar cookie. It's more of a floured sugar cookie, very soft and fluffy.
Fluffy cookies.
If there was a sexy cookie, this fluffy little cookie is super sexy.
Fluffy is sexy.
But, you know, like when you consider that, I mean, my grandma and grandpa had 6 children who had spouses, so there's 12, plus like 17 or 18 grandkids. And if everybody's eating 6 cookies each, I mean, start doing the numbers on like how many sugar cookies my grandma made.
You've got to have a big production.
Oh yeah, so she'd have them all baked, and then as we came in, then it would be having the children around the table, the grandchildren, decorating cookies, and that's kind of a Christmas tradition that my mom carried over into our family, and it's something that her grandchildren, which would be my sister and my children, just absolutely look forward to. And even I think in their minds, I could totally be wrong. Adam, check in with Michaela and find out. But like, I think it's like such a great memory that they'd rather do that than even like, well, they probably really did like opening presents as kids, you know. Sure. And it always cracked me up because, and my mom is incredible, thoughtful gift giver. But she really enjoyed filling a stocking, you know. So, you know, there are those things. But then I go back to like the foodie part, and I got a sweet tooth. So like the candies and the sugars and the Buckeyes, or you know, the dip chocolates. Right. I mean, you know, any time you can take confection sugar and butter and then wrap it in like some waxed up chocolate, and start popping those. And this is actually, I have talked long enough that I remembered why I even thought of this question. Because I have a holiday tradition for me personally. Yeah. Sweetened condensed milk. Every year in December, I buy one can. I allow myself once a year to get a can of sweetened condensed milk, and I use that in my coffee as a creamer sweetener.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wacko, totally off the charts, but I enjoy just taking a spoonful of sweetened condensed milk and just eating it.
I've never done that.
Dude, I'm telling you, the experience.
Yeah.
It's so sexy.
It's so sexy.
When everybody gets it, I'm going to have to put that on the title.
It's so sexy.
It's so sexy. Last episode, it's so sexy. Oh, my word. We're going to have all
Seems to be a theme
all
today.
the bots from Asia are going to be leaving comments. But yeah, so, and actually I think it was this guy Brian, they used to get a can of sweetened condensed milk in their stocking. And then apparently there's a way where you can leave the sweetened condensed milk in the can. You just open the top, but you basically create a double boiler. So you put it in a saucepan that has water, and then you bring the water up to temp, and then you can turn that sweetened condensed milk into caramel by getting the temp up or whatever.
Like, I'm assuming with the sugars in there that it
Yeah.
caramelizes.
All the sweetened condensedness becomes more condensed in the same amount of sweet. Yeah, and so that was this morning when I had my first cup of coffee. I was like, oh, I wonder if Phil has any nostalgic moments, you know, and stuff. And so,
that's interesting.
But I will also say that I am, and whether this is adventure, discovery, I'm Here's the disclaimer. This is where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
I put up Christmas decorations this week. I mean, like I strung a couple lights out over the patio.
Mm-hmm.
Got these glass lantern things that I was in Aldi. They have battery operated candles that I put in these lantern things to light the pathway.
Perfect.
Did that around the pine cones that are underneath the TV, and hung a wreath on the patio wall and stuff like that, and that's not all of the decorations that we have, but and so I'm like, I need to go into the holiday with reframing what that is, and what that means and how that all goes together and stuff like that. So anyway, nostalgia. I mean, one of my favorite memories as a child was we were too poor to be able to buy a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was too stubborn to put up a fake tree. And I remember going out with my dad, and we lived on a farm lot, and we had cedars and we had pine trees and stuff, and like him chopping down a tree from our property to become our Christmas tree. One of my favorite couple 2-3 years or whatever is we had a lot of red cedar on the property. I'll take a red cedar Christmas tree any day of the week. I mean, I think that they're just absolutely beautiful, but that's because of my point of origin. But
nostalgia.
I mean, how many people get to do that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, when you talk about white privilege, I mean, you're talking about rural, dude grew up on a farm. I mean, like, that was something that we did.
Yeah.
But it was in context, I mean, I hope everybody heard that.
Right.
Like, we didn't have money to buy a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were burning firewood in the furnace, or in this heating fireplace that heated the whole house, because fuel oil costs so much.
Mm-hmm.
We were eating game. Venison was on our table because there wasn't money to buy beef.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people are like, yeah, you've got it pretty cushy. Oh, this is only a segment of my life.
Mm. Yeah, and there's part of where, the land is there to live off of. And you did.
Well, I mean,
there was a necessity versus the, like nostalgia of, oh, what would it be like to live off the land?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and when you actually run out of opportunities to have venison in your, then you go and buy beef. Like, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Like, no, you were eating venison because it was, something that you were able to live off the land with.
Yeah. Well, and it was, it wasn't the sake of, oh, I'm hunting deer for game, like, because I enjoy the hunt. It was, we're harvesting deer so that we have enough meat to make it through the year.
Right.
Yeah. And, and I, again, that was formative years. I was probably between the ages of 12 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what the financial situation was,
Mm-hmm.
other than it was a hard time.
Right.
I don't know the dollars and cents of that. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know. I wasn't paying the electric bill. I wasn't paying the telephone bill. I wasn't paying for the heating oil. I wasn't paying the taxes on the farm. I mean, the farmer was planting in the spring and harvesting in the fall and bringing a check, and the mortgage got paid and nobody kicked us out, and the electric was still on, and we had water from a well. I mean, and my dentist actually knew that when he looked at my teeth. He's like, you grew up on a farm, rural water, right? I'm like, how can you tell? He goes, just by the shape of your teeth. And he's like, I know you didn't have fluoride in your water. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want fluoride in my water right now.
Right. Oh. So when we're coming down to the end of the season, it's always a good time to reflect. It's always a good time to talk about the evolution of self, the transformations that we go under, and that maybe we are in the midst of. So it's something to be able to put back on you, the listener, the watcher, is, what are the things that you're looking at in your life right now as part of transformation? You're looking at the season. You're saying, what are those nostalgia pieces? How can you continue to invest in relationship? And all of those questions that arise.
Yeah, and you know what? What I would just say in my wrap-up is I'm amazed at how many people don't know what's going on here. So feel free to gossip about it. I mean, like, if you're going to be talking about someone, and whether it's in a positive or derogatory way, talk to someone about us.
Very good.
Gossip.
That's good thoughts.
Gossip.
Gossip about CDU.
Gossip the daisies. Gossip, gossip, gossip. Spread the word. Hey, it's a secret. Don't tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah, there's these two guys. They're whack jobs,
Right.
by the way.
It's underground.
Oh, yeah.
It's an underground podcast.
Who was I telling the other day? I don't know. I was telling somebody the other day. I'm like, the reality is, it was basically that I'm living in witness protection program, but I'm not telling anybody my secret identity. I'm staying Steve Coble, because then if I tell people my secret identity, then they would know my secret.
Witness protection.
Hey, everybody. It's a secret. Cut Daisies and Unicorns is coming back 2022.
Right. It's a secret.
Go ahead and gossip that.
Right. Just start sowing those seeds.
Hey.
Sowing the seeds.
And for everybody who is wondering about how this next week is really going down, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And of all the happy New Years that you've already had, maybe this be the happiest of the New Years you could have.
There you go. That's a great way to close it out.
I think so. Yeah, because it's coming up. When everybody's enjoying Christmas Eve and Christmas, there will be no Cut Daisies and Unicorns. I would send you back to any of the, I think it's 94 videos that are on YouTube and or the podcast.
Take a look, everybody.
And for those of you who have a question on whether we can finish anything at all, we did it this year. We did a whole season.
We did a whole season.
Oh, a whole year.
A whole
We
year.
did four
seasons.
4 seasons, 10 episodes. Anyway, thank you so much for your faithful listening. And hey, I'm thanking all the people who are going to listen next year who haven't even heard, because you're going to gossip this tune.
Yeah. Keep gossiping.
Got to keep.
Be well in this the new year coming up, and look for those moments. There's always going to be moments.
I've got a moment. I'm having a moment. All right. Take care, everybody.